Greetings everyone! Recently there's been a trickle of new Pancake lenses being released which are known as body cap lenses, or sometimes just lens caps. They are basically camera body caps with very tiny lenses tucked in the middle, which cost very little money, and they've been making various appearances on the mirrorless camera market. Well, now you can get one for your digital SLR too, if you're so inclined, with this. The Loreo Lens in a cap. It's a standard 35mm focal length, it's compatible with full-frame and APS-C cameras, and they're available for only about £25, which is very cheap indeed. It has a tiny 3-element f5.6 optic, housed in an extremely thin, light plastic body. A built-in dial provides little irises, which allow you to darken the aperture to f8, f16, f32, or even f64. And, well, that's the extent of its controls really. You can't change focus at all. So, in order to be sharp at infinity, the minimum focus distance of this lens, at f5.6, seems to be about 7 or 8 meters. Basically, if you're shooting at f5.6 or f8, you can only take pictures of things that are far away if you want the sharpest results. That is not an attractive lens characteristic at all. Also, the fact that this lens is set so that infinity is always in focus means that you will never ever get out of focus backgrounds, which is sad. Overall, as you can see, the lens is extremely simple, tiny and cheap. Well, let's take a look at its image quality. We'll start by testing on a full-frame camera, a 20-megapixel Canon 6D. This should be interesting. In the middle of the image at f5.6, we see quite a soft picture, but in fairness, you can make out what's going on. Contrast levels, however, are alarmingly low, making the picture look extremely murky. As we look into the corners of the image, picture quality quickly falls apart. We encounter a witch's brew of extreme softness, ghosting, chromatic aberration, vignetting, and even lower contrast. What a mess! Stop the aperture down to f8 and a lot of the softness and some of the ghosting disappears, but it's still like you're taking a picture through a dirty window pane. You get the best picture quality at f16, where the image is at its clearest. It's still a bit soft though. Back in the middle of the image, the lens has become reasonably sharp, although contrast levels are still diabolical. And I've noticed something. If we zoom out again and look at the whole picture, then you might notice something that I for one have never seen before. The middle of the image has brightened up, showing a noticeable, ugly white patch across the centre. It's too bright and distinctive to be vignetting, especially as we've already stopped the lens's aperture down, and it was a cloudy day, so it's not lens flare. If we stop down further to f32 or even down to f64, then that pointer brightness becomes even brighter and more distinct. What a nasty little optical problem. If we zoom in again, then we can see that, at f64, the lens has become extremely soft due to the effects of diffraction. So overall, on a full-frame camera, this is easily the worst lens with optical elements that I've ever tested. It's a new low. The worst thing is its severe lack of contrast, which acts as a kind of evil cloud layer, vainly trying to cover up all the lens's other optical deficiencies. Ugly. Well, let's test it on an APS-C camera now, in this case a 20-megapixel Canon 70D. At f5.6, in the middle of the image, the lens is soft, with appallingly bad contrast levels. And, just like on full frame, the corners of the image really plumb the depths, as you can see here. It looks like a complete mess. Stop the aperture down to f8 for the tiniest of improvements in those corners, and the lens is a little less soft in the middle too. That is as sharp as this lens gets though, because at f16 the image is already getting softer due to diffraction. Again, if we zoom out, we can see that mysterious white cloud in the middle once more. At f32 the cloud is gathering into the centre, and at f64 it's horribly prominent there, and the picture quality has become ridiculously soft. Not that anyone really wants to take pictures at such a dark aperture as f64 anyway. In summary, well, frankly, I'm having trouble dragging out enough pejorative terms from my mental thesaurus to describe this cheap, plastic piece of trash. It's about as bad as a lens could get before being classed as simply unfit for purpose. Moving on swiftly, and now I normally test the close-up picture quality, but like I said, at f5.6, the nearest point to where the image is in focus is about 7 or 8 meters away, so there's really no need. And also, that handily explains for you why my distortion and vignetting test chart is so out of focus here. It is on A2 sized paper, so it's not exactly small. As you can see, on a full-frame camera, we get some surprisingly strong pincushion distortion. I've never seen that on a wide-angle lens before, and it's quite noticeable in everyday pictures. At f5.6, there is a lot of darkness in those corners too. Stop down to f8 or even f16 and that vignetting still hasn't gone away, although the increased depth of field means that my chart is at least a bit more in focus now. When the Loreo lens in a cap is faced against any bright light, we see jaw-dropping amounts of lens flare and a truly epic loss of contrast. A giant bright spot is also there to greet us. Stop the aperture down a bit, for example to f16, and the nature of the flaring pattern changes, but you'd hardly call it an improvement. Now normally in my reviews, this is the point where I look at the quality of lenses' out-of-focus backgrounds, also known as its bokeh. But as I mentioned, it's literally impossible to get an out-of-focus background with this thing, so obviously I won't. Overall, this lens is the stuff of your photographic nightmares. It fails on every count. If you really wanted to insult a photographer friend, then simply hand them this lens and tell them it might improve their camera work. I'm going off now to find some way to destroy this thing. I might put it in a microwave or something, I don't care. It's horrible. If I do, then I'll make a video of it, so stay tuned to my YouTube channel and stay away from this lens.